I've been invisible for 8 months. That's the truth of working in a house like Giovanni Moretti's. You learn to move through rooms like air, present but unnoticed. My hands polish surfaces that gleam under chandeliers I could never afford. Fold towels softer than anything I've ever slept on. And arrange flowers that cost more than my weekly groceries. The mansion sprawls across 3 floors of Manhattan luxury, all marble and dark wood and windows that overlook a city I can barely afford to live in. Giovanni Moretti himself is a shadow I've learned to predict. I hear his footsteps on the stairs, measured, deliberate, and know to be elsewhere. I catch glimpses of him through doorways. Dark hair perfectly styled, expensive suits that fit like they were born on him, and eyes the color of aged whiskey that never quite land on me. He holds meetings in his study with men who speak in low voices and leave through side doors. I clean up after them, empty ashtrays that smell of Cuban cigars, collect forgotten glasses still wet with liquor. I don't ask questions. That's not my job. My job is to disappear. The only constant in this carefully ordered existence is Brittany. My sister works in the kitchen, 23 years old with our mother's easy laugh and none of my caution. She makes breakfasts that smell like comfort and dinners that look like art. And every evening when our shifts end, we ride the subway back to our cramped apartment in the Bronx together. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, neighbors who fight at 3 a.m. But it's ours. Well, rented, barely afforded. I work the extra shifts when they're offered because I need every dollar. Because $47,000 in medical debt doesn't disappear on its own. Because my mother died 2 years ago from cancer that ate through her body and our savings simultaneously. And the bills kept coming long after her funeral. I signed payment plans I'll be honoring into my 30s. Accepted interest rates that should be criminal, and learned to survive on cheap coffee and cheaper hope. So I clean, I fold, I polish, I accept overtime without complaint. Thursday night, the grandfather clock in the main hall chimes 10 times as I finish wiping down the banister. My shoulders ache from scrubbing tile grout in the 3rd-floor bathroom, and my lower back protests when I bend to collect my cleaning caddy. October in New York means darkness falls early, and through the tall windows, I watch rain begin to streak the glass. You heading out? Brittany appears from the kitchen, pulling on her jacket. She smells like rosemary and garlic from whatever she prepared for Giovanni's dinner. Yeah, long day. She studies my face with the particular intensity only siblings can manage. You look exhausted. I'm fine. You always say that. She links her arm through mine as we walk toward the service entrance. Movie night this weekend? I'll make popcorn. If I'm not working. Lauren. Her voice carries gentle reproach. You can't keep doing doubles forever. But I can. I have to. The next payment is due in 2 weeks, and I'm short by $300. Outside, the rain has graduated from drizzle to downpour. We huddle under the small awning by the service door, and Brittany pulls out her phone to check the subway status. Train's running on time. Ready to make a run for it? 3 blocks. That's all it is. 3 blocks from the Moretti mansion to the Christopher Street station. We've walked it hundreds of times, usually together, sometimes alone when our shifts don't align. The neighborhood is supposed to be safe. This is Giovanni's territory, after all, and I've heard the whispers about what that means. Protection, order, rules enforced by men in dark suits. Tonight, Brittany got a text from her boyfriend before we left. Some emergency with his roommate that had her swearing under her breath and apologizing profusely. Go, I told her. I'll be fine. You sure? It's 3 blocks. She kissed my cheek and ran toward the garage where she'd parked her ancient Honda. I watched her taillights disappear around the corner, then pulled my hood up against the rain and started walking. The street was quieter than usual. Most storefronts had already closed, their windows dark except for security lights that cast everything in shades of amber and shadow. My sneakers splashed through puddles, soaking through to my socks within half a block. I kept my head down, focused on the familiar route, counting the shops I passed like prayer beads. The Italian restaurant, the dry cleaner, the pharmacy with the flickering neon sign. 2 blocks down. 1 to go. The alley appeared on my left, narrow and dark between 2 buildings. I'd passed it 1,000 times without thought. But tonight, 2 figures stepped out from the shadows, blocking the sidewalk ahead. I stopped, heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. Evening, one of them said. White guy, maybe 30, with a shaved head and a jacket that looked too thin for the weather. His companion was taller, broader, silent. Evening, I managed, moving to step around them. The first man shifted, staying in my path. Where are you headed in such a hurry? Home. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Excuse me. Hold on now. He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Just being neighborly, making conversation. The taller one moved behind me, cutting off retreat. My stomach dropped. I don't want trouble, I said. No trouble. The first man held up his hands, palms out. Just need your bag and that phone in your pocket. Nice and easy. My mind raced through options. Scream. But who would hear over the rain? Run. But where? Fight. Against 2 men twice my size. I pulled my crossbody bag over my head with shaking hands and held it out. He took it, rifled through quickly, pocketed my wallet. Then he looked at me expectantly. Phone. I reached into my jacket, fingers numb, and handed over my cell. My lifeline. My alarm clock. My connection to Brittany. Good girl. He examined the phone, then his eyes landed on my shirt. My cleaning uniform, visible where my jacket hung open. Simple gray polo with the mansion's discreet logo embroidered on the chest. Wait a second. He stepped closer, rain plastering his face. You work at that house. The big one on the corner. Fear spiked cold through my veins. No, don't lie. He grabbed my collar, yanking me forward. I seen that logo before. You work for the Italian, don't you? I don't know what you're talking about. Bullshit. He looked at his companion. She works for Moretti. The taller man's expression changed. Something dark crossed his features. I'm just a cleaner, I said desperately. I don't know anything. I just clean houses. Please. Just a cleaner. The first man laughed, but it was ugly. Well, just a cleaner. You're gonna deliver a message for us. The first punch came from nowhere, catching me across the cheekbone. Pain exploded white-hot behind my eyes, and I staggered backward. Before I could recover, hands grabbed my arms, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. I tried to scream, but a palm clamped over my mouth. This is what happens, the first man said, close to my ear. When people think they own our streets. When they think their Italian boss can tell us what to do. The second hit caught my ribs. Then another, and another. I stopped counting after the fourth, stopped trying to fight, just curled inward and prayed for it to end. Someone grabbed my hair, yanked my head back, and I saw the first man's fist coming toward my face before everything went black. I don't know how long I was unconscious. Could have been seconds or minutes. When awareness returned, I was lying on wet pavement, rain drumming against my back. Every breath felt like knives in my side. My left eye wouldn't open properly, swollen and throbbing. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth. They were gone. My bag, my phone, and my attackers. All vanished into the October night. I pushed myself to sitting, biting back a sob as my ribs protested. My hands were scraped raw, my jeans torn at the knee. Through my one working eye, I could see the subway station ahead, its lights wavering through the rain. Get up. Move. Get home. I don't remember the walk clearly, just fragments, stumbling through the turnstile. A woman's concerned face asking if I needed help. Me shaking my head. The jarring motion of the train. Climbing the stairs to our apartment building felt like scaling a mountain. Our bathroom mirror told the story my body already knew. My left eye was swollen shut, purple spreading across the socket. My bottom lip was split and bleeding. When I lifted my shirt, bruises were already forming along my ribs in shades of red and purple. My arms bore the clear imprint of fingers where I'd been grabbed. I turned on the shower, letting it run hot, and sat on the bathroom floor fully clothed while steam filled the space. Only then did I let myself cry, quiet and controlled so I wouldn't wake Brittany. But she woke anyway. Her bedroom door opened. Footsteps approached, and then she was in the bathroom doorway, her face going pale. Lauren. Oh my God, Lauren. I'm okay. You're bleeding. We need to go to the hospital. No. Lauren, I can't afford it. My voice broke. I can't afford the ER visit, Britt. I can't. She crouched beside me, her hands hovering like she was afraid to touch me and cause more pain. What happened? Mugged. 2 guys. They took everything. Did you call the police? No phone, remember? I tried to smile, but my split lip made me wince. It's fine. I'll file a report tomorrow. Brittany's expression said she didn't believe any of this was fine, but she didn't argue. Instead, she helped me out of my wet clothes, steadied me as I showered, and bandaged the worst of the scrapes with supplies from our first aid kit. When I finally crawled into bed, she sat beside me in the dark. I shouldn't have left you alone, she whispered. Not your fault. But as I lay there, every part of my body screaming, I couldn't stop replaying the moment the first man saw my uniform. The recognition in his eyes, the deliberate violence that followed. This wasn't random, and somehow, that made it infinitely worse. Sleep came in fragments, broken by pain that pulsed through my ribs with every breath. When my alarm went off at 6, I lay there staring at the ceiling, contemplating the impossible mathematics of missing work. I needed every shift, every dollar. The medical bills didn't care if I'd been beaten half to death in an alley. $47,000. That number followed me like a shadow, constant and suffocating. Each month I chipped away at it. 300 here, 500 when I worked doubles. But the interest kept it alive, breathing, growing. Missing even one day meant falling further behind. I dragged myself upright, biting back a groan as my ribs protested. The bathroom mirror showed me exactly what I'd be working with. My left eye had transformed into a grotesque palette of purple and black, swollen enough that I could barely see through the slit. The cut on my lip had scabbed over during the night. Bruises bloomed across my jaw and cheekbone like violent flowers. Makeup became war paint. I layered concealer thick enough to pass for a mask, though it did little to hide the swelling. Foundation in 3 different shades to try to match what my skin used to look like. The eye was hopeless. No amount of product could disguise that damage. I settled for making the rest of my face look human and hoped people wouldn't look too closely. The long-sleeve shirt came out of necessity despite the October heat that had settled over the city. Gray charcoal, high-necked, covering every inch of damage I could hide. When I checked my reflection one final time, I looked like someone wearing a bad disguise of myself. Brittany was already in the kitchen when I emerged, and her face crumpled the moment she saw me. Don't, I said before she could start. I'm going to work. Lauren, you can barely walk. I can walk fine. A lie. Every step sent shocks through my left side where they'd kicked me. And I need the money. One day won't. Yes, it will. I poured coffee into a travel mug, movements careful and deliberate. Payments due in 2 weeks. I'm already short 300. She opened her mouth, closed it. We both knew the math. Both lived inside the same impossible budget. At least let me drive you, she said finally. I accepted because the subway stairs felt insurmountable this morning. The mansion looked exactly as it always did. Beautiful, imposing, utterly indifferent to my suffering. Brittany dropped me at the service entrance with a look that said we'd be discussing this later, then drove around to the garage. She'd be in the kitchen by now, starting prep for whatever elaborate breakfast Giovanni preferred on Fridays. I made it through the morning on autopilot. Dust the library, vacuum the second-floor hallway, change linens in the guest rooms. Each task required focus to complete without aggravating my injuries. I moved slowly, methodically, and avoided every reflective surface I passed. Around noon, Brittany found me folding towels in the linen closet. You look awful, she said bluntly. Thanks. I'm serious. Your face is twice its normal size. It's fine. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Did you at least file a police report? I will, after work. Another lie. What would I tell them? That I got mugged and the attackers mentioned my employer? That felt dangerous in ways I couldn't articulate. Lauren, I need to finish the 3rd floor. I picked up my caddy of cleaning supplies, using it as a shield. Mr. Moretti has people coming this afternoon. Everything needs to be perfect. Brittany's expression suggested she had more to say, but she let me go. I climbed the stairs slowly, grateful for the emptiness of the upper floors where no one would see me struggle. Giovanni's study was last on my list. He typically spent afternoons in meetings downtown, leaving his private space empty until evening. I knocked twice out of habit, got no response, and let myself in. The room smelled of leather and aged paper, with undertones of the whiskey he drank and the cigars he smoked on the terrace. His desk dominated the space. Dark wood polished to a mirror shine, papers arranged in precise stacks. I'd learned his system over months of cleaning. Never move the papers, just dust around them. Never touch the laptop. The crystal decanter and glasses got hand-washed and replaced exactly where they'd been. I was wiping down the windowsill, back to the door, when I heard it. Footsteps. My heart jumped stupidly, rabbit-quick panic, before logic reasserted itself. Just another employee. The housekeeper. Franco checking if I needed anything. But when I turned, Giovanni Moretti stood in the doorway. He'd removed his suit jacket, rolled his shirt sleeves to his elbows. Dark hair slightly disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. And his eyes, those dark whiskey eyes I'd seen 100 times from a distance, were fixed directly on me. Actually seeing me, not through me. "Sorry, Mr. Moretti." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I thought you were out this afternoon." "I can come back. What happened to your face?" The question landed like a physical blow. Direct. Unavoidable. I fell. The lie I'd practiced. Subway stairs. They get slippery when it rains. He didn't respond. Didn't move. Just stood there watching me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Then he stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with a quiet click that felt far too intimate. Look at me. Not a request. Not quite an order. Something in between that made me obey before I'd decided to. I lifted my face, let him see the full extent of the damage the makeup couldn't hide. His expression didn't change. Still that careful neutrality I'd observed from afar. But something hardened in his jaw. He crossed the space between us in 3 measured steps, and suddenly he was close. Too close. Near enough that I could smell cedar and something darker. More expensive. "Tell me again how you fell." The stairs were wet. I lost my footing. "Which side did you fall on?" The question confused me. What? Left or right? Which side hit the stairs? My mind scrambled. Left, I think. "You think." He circled slowly, like a predator examining prey, and I fought the urge to back away. "But you're favoring your left side when you breathe. Protecting it. So you fell on the left, hit your left eye, split your lip, and now your left ribs hurt." Heat flooded my face. "Yes, that's a very consistent fall." He stopped in front of me again. "Show me your arms. Mr. Moretti. Show me." My hands trembled as I set down the cleaning cloth. This was my employer. I couldn't refuse, didn't want to, for reasons I couldn't examine too closely. I pushed up the right sleeve first, the arm that had taken less damage. Just some scrapes across the forearm. The other one, I hesitated. The left arm told a different story. But Giovanni waited with infinite patience, and eventually I pushed up that sleeve too. The bruises were spectacular. Perfect finger-shaped marks circling my bicep where someone had grabbed me. Purple and yellow and angry red. Unmistakable. Giovanni stared at them for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had dropped to something cold and deadly. "Who did this to you?" "I told you." "Don't." The word cracked like a whip. "Don't lie to me again, Lauren. Those are not from a fall. Someone grabbed you. Held you. Where did this happen?" The use of my name shocked me into silence. I hadn't known he knew my name. 8 months of invisibility, and he'd known it all along. 3 blocks from here. The truth came out before I could stop it. Thursday night. Walking to the subway. What did they take? My bag, phone, wallet. And then? I couldn't answer. Couldn't find words for the violence that had followed. The deliberate cruelty. "And then?" he repeated. Softer but no less insistent. "They saw my uniform." My voice cracked. "Asked if I worked for you. I said no, but they didn't believe me. They said..." I stopped, swallowed. They said it was a message. The silence that followed felt dangerous. Giovanni's jaw tightened incrementally, the only visible sign of whatever was happening behind those dark eyes. Then he moved to his desk, pressed a button on the phone. "Franco? My office? Now." "Mr. Moretti, please," I started. "Sit down. I don't want to cause trouble." "Sit down." Not angry, just absolute. The voice of someone who expected obedience and received it. I sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, feeling small and exposed. Giovanni remained standing, one hand braced on the desk, staring at nothing. Franco arrived within minutes. A man in his late 30s with silver threading his dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. He took one look at my face and went still. "3 blocks from here," Giovanni said without preamble. "Thursday night. 2 men. They saw her uniform and decided to deliver a message." Franco's expression turned to stone. "Where exactly?" "Between the dry cleaner and the pharmacy," I supplied quietly. "Around 10:15. We have cameras in that area. I'll pull the footage." He glanced at me again, and there was something almost like sympathy in his eyes. "Can you describe them?" I did. White guy, shaved head, thin jacket. Taller companion, broader, never spoke. Details I'd replayed in my mind all night. "Cole," Franco said after a moment. "Sounds like Darren Cole. Works for the Albanians." Giovanni's hand curled into a fist on the desk. "Find him. Find them both. I want them here by midnight. Consider it done." Franco left as quickly as he'd arrived, and I was alone with Giovanni again. The silence stretched unbearably until I couldn't stand it anymore. "This isn't necessary," I said. "I'm fine. It was just a mugging." "It wasn't a mugging." Giovanni finally looked at me, and there was something in his expression that made my breath catch. Not pity. Not even anger exactly. It was a challenge, an insult. "They attacked you because you work for me, in my territory, on my street. That makes it personal. I'm just a maid. You work in my home." He moved around the desk, sat in the chair beside mine instead of behind the desk. "Close. Equal. You've been here 8 months. I notice things, Lauren. How you organize books by author without being asked. How you never gossip with the other staff. How you take every overtime shift offered." My throat tightened. "I need the money. I know. Medical bills for your mother." Of course he knew. He probably knew everything about everyone who worked for him. "So, you understand?" He continued, voice dropping. "Why I can't let this go. If I allow someone to hurt one of my people without consequences, it shows weakness. And weakness in my world gets you killed." The casual mention of killing should have terrified me. Instead, I felt something else entirely. Something warm and dangerous that had no place in this situation. "What will you do to them?" I asked. "What needs to be done?" He stood, offered me his hand. "Come. You're not cleaning anything else today. You're going to rest in one of the guest rooms until this is handled." I took his hand before I'd decided to. His grip was firm, careful, and he pulled me to my feet with effortless strength. For a moment we stood too close, his hand still holding mine, and the air between us felt charged with something I didn't understand. Then he released me and stepped back. "This way." I followed him through corridors I'd cleaned 1,000 times, but everything looked different now. I wasn't invisible anymore. Giovanni Moretti saw me, knew my name, and for reasons I couldn't fathom. That changed everything. The guest room Giovanni showed me to was larger than my bedroom at home. Cream walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the garden, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. I stood in the doorway, feeling profoundly out of place. "Sit," Giovanni said, gesturing to an upholstered chair by the window. "Franco will need time to pull the security footage. I want you resting until then. I should finish my work." That wasn't a suggestion. His tone allowed no argument. "You're injured. You'll rest." He left before I could protest further, the door clicking shut with quiet finality. I sank into the chair because my legs were shaking, and my ribs screamed with every movement. Through the window, I watched shadows lengthen across the garden as afternoon shifted toward evening. Brittany appeared 20 minutes later, carrying a tray with tea and sandwiches I hadn't asked for. She set it on the side table, then perched on the arm of my chair. Okay, what the hell is happening? She kept her voice low. Giovanni Moretti just personally escorted you upstairs. Franco's running around looking like someone kicked his dog. And you're sitting in the nicest guest room like you're actually a guest instead of staff. He knows about the attack. How? He saw my face. Asked questions. I couldn't keep lying. I picked up the teacup, more for something to do with my hands than from thirst. Britt, they recognized my uniform. The men who attacked me. They knew I worked here. Her face went pale. That's why Giovanni's taking it personally. Yeah. I sipped the tea. Too hot, burning my already split lip, but I welcomed the distraction. He said it's an insult to him, that he can't let it go unpunished. Brittany was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, I've worked here 2 years. Never seen him like this. Like what? Focused. Angry, but cold angry. The kind that's more dangerous than yelling. She studied me with those 2 knowing sister eyes. He used your name. So, Lauren, he calls me the cook. Everyone else is staff. He knows our names. He knows everything, but he doesn't use them. Distance, you know? But he used yours. Before I could respond to that deeply uncomfortable observation, a knock came at the door. Franco entered, carrying a laptop and manila folder. His expression was grim. We have the footage, he said without preamble. Mr. Moretti wants you to confirm identification. I followed him downstairs to Giovanni's study, Brittany trailing behind us like a protective shadow. The room felt different now, charged with purpose instead of empty luxury. Giovanni stood behind his desk, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled up, looking every inch the dangerous man I'd always suspected he was. Franco opened the laptop, angled the screen toward me. Grainy black and white footage showed a street corner I recognized. The timestamp read 10:14 p.m., Thursday. I watched myself walk into frame, hood up against the rain, head down. Then 2 figures emerged from the alley. My stomach twisted. Even in poor quality video, I recognized them. That's them, I said quietly. Franco paused the frame, zoomed in on the first man's face. You're certain? Yes. He's the one who grabbed me. Asked about my uniform. Giovanni leaned forward, studying the frozen image with predatory focus. Darren Cole. Small-time enforcer for the Albanian operation. Works collections, intimidation. He looked at Franco. The other one? Victor something. Croatian, I think. Muscle for hire. Franco pulled photographs from the folder, spread them across the desk. Cole's been on our radar for months. He's part of Krasniki's crew pushing into Lower Manhattan. Krasniki. Giovanni pronounced the name like a curse. So this wasn't random. Territory play, Franco confirmed. They're testing boundaries, hitting your people to see if you'll respond. I listened to them discuss violence and territory and power plays like they were analyzing a chess match. The clinical detachment should have frightened me. Instead, I felt strangely removed, like I was watching a play instead of participating in my own life. What will you do? The question escaped before I could stop it. Both men looked at me. Giovanni's expression softened fractionally. Find them. Bring them here. Make it clear that touching anyone under my protection has consequences. You don't have to do this because of me. My voice sounded small even to my own ears. I'm nobody. Just someone who cleans your house. Giovanni circled the desk with deliberate slowness, each step measured and purposeful. He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. You work in my home, he said, voice low and intense. You've been here 8 months. I've noticed how you fold the newspapers so the headlines face up. How you water the orchids in the library every Tuesday because you know they need consistent care. How you never complain, never ask for anything, just do your job with quiet competence. Heat flooded my face. You notice that? I notice everything in my world, Lauren, and you're part of it, whether you realize it or not. He glanced at Franco. Assemble a team. 6 men. Find Cole and bring him to me. The Croatian too, if you can locate him. Done. Franco closed the laptop. What about the girl? She stays here tonight. Guest room on the 2nd floor. Her sister too. Wait. I started. Giovanni held up a hand, silencing me. This isn't negotiable. Those men know you work here. They know what you look like. Until I've handled this situation, you're not walking home alone through my streets. I can't just stay here. I have a life, an apartment, bills to pay. Your bills will be there tomorrow. His tone brooked no argument. Tonight, you're under my roof and my protection. Accept it. The word protection hung in the air between us, weighted with implications I wasn't ready to examine. But exhaustion and pain were catching up to me, dragging at my bones until standing felt like an insurmountable effort. Fine, I said. One night, Giovanni's expression shifted into something that might have been satisfaction. Franco, make the arrangements. I want updates every hour. Franco left, and I found myself alone with Giovanni again. He watched me with that unsettling intensity, like he was cataloging every micro-expression. Why do you work so hard? He asked suddenly. The double shifts, the overtime. Most people do the minimum. You do everything. I debated lying, then decided he probably already knew anyway. Medical debt. My mother died 2 years ago. Cancer. The bills didn't stop with her. Understanding flickered across his features. How much? That's not your concern. How much, Lauren? The use of my name again. Like he was trying it out, testing how it felt in his mouth. 47,000. Give or take. He absorbed this information with a single nod. And you're paying it off on a housekeeper's salary. I don't have much choice. There's always a choice. He moved to the window, stared out at the darkening garden. You could have declared bankruptcy, walked away from the debt. That's not who I am. No. He glanced back at me. It's not. You honor your obligations even when they're destroying you. That's rare. Before I could respond, Brittany appeared in the doorway, looking uncertain. Sorry to interrupt. The housekeeper said I should set up in the room next to Lauren's. Yes. Giovanni straightened. Both of you will stay tonight. Tomorrow we'll reassess the situation. Brittany looked at me, eyebrows raised in silent question. I gave her a tiny nod, and she disappeared down the hallway. I should go, I said. Let you work. One more thing. Giovanni crossed to his desk, wrote something on a notepad, tore off the sheet and handed it to me. A phone number in bold, precise handwriting. My direct line. If anything happens, anything, you call me immediately. Nothing's going to happen. Your house is practically a fortress. Nevertheless, he closed my fingers around the paper. Keep it with you. His hand lingered on mine for half a second too long, warm and solid, before he released me and stepped back. The brief contact left my skin tingling. Thank you, I managed. Don't thank me yet. The night isn't over. I left him there, standing in his study surrounded by evidence of the violence he was planning, and climbed the stairs to the guest room where Brittany waited. She took one look at my face and pulled me into a careful hug, mindful of my injuries. This is insane, she whispered. I know. He's going after them. For you. I know. Lauren, I know Britt. I know what he is. I know what he's going to do. I pulled back, met her worried gaze, and I can't bring myself to feel bad about it. That admission hung between us, heavy with implications neither of us wanted to voice. Brittany helped me out of my work clothes, gasped when she saw the full extent of the bruising across my ribs and back. She didn't say anything, just grabbed pajamas from the dresser, silk, expensive, left by some previous guest, and helped me dress like I was made of glass. We sat together on the massive bed, and I told her everything. The attack, Giovanni's reaction, Franco's investigation, the security footage. She listened without interruption, processing it all with the same pragmatic calm she brought to everything. So what happens now? She finally asked. I thought about Giovanni's cold fury, Franco's efficient violence, the carefully controlled power that ran through this house like electricity through wires. Thought about how I should be terrified, but instead felt something closer to relief. Now, I said. We wait. Through the window, night had fully fallen. Somewhere in the city, men with guns were hunting the people who'd hurt me. And I was lying in silk pajamas in a mansion, protected by someone who commanded armies with a whisper. The world had shifted on its axis in the span of a single afternoon, and I suspected it would never quite settle back into place. Sleep refused to come. I lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at shadows that danced across the ceiling, listening to Brittany's steady breathing from the adjacent room. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the footage again. Grainy images of myself being cornered, attacked, left bleeding in the rain. My ribs throbbed with each breath, a metronome of pain keeping time with my racing thoughts. Around 2 a.m, I heard it. Voices, low and urgent, drifting up from somewhere below. Then the distinct sound of a heavy door closing. Not slamming. Controlled. Deliberate. I should have stayed in bed. Should have pulled the covers over my head and pretended I heard nothing. Instead, I found myself padding barefoot across the plush carpet, easing the bedroom door open with careful silence. The hallway stretched before me, illuminated by subtle floor lighting that cast everything in shades of amber. The voices were coming from Giovanni's study. My heart hammered as I crept down the stairs, each step measured and quiet. I'd cleaned these stairs dozens of times, knew which boards creaked, which sections of railing were loose. Now that knowledge served a different purpose as I descended into the darkened first floor. Light spilled from beneath the study door, a golden line against polished hardwood. I approached it like approaching a wild animal. Slow, cautious, barely breathing. The door stood slightly ajar, just wide enough to see inside if I positioned myself correctly. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. 2 men knelt in the center of the room, hands zip-tied behind their backs. I recognized them immediately despite the blood on their faces, the shaved head, the broader build of his companion, the men who'd attacked me. Franco stood to one side, arms crossed, expression carved from granite. 2 other men I didn't recognize flanked the doorway, guns visible at their waists. And Giovanni sat in his leather chair, perfectly still, watching the kneeling men with the focused attention of a predator studying prey. I didn't know Mr. Moretti. The shaved man, Cole, Franco had called him, spoke rapidly, words tumbling over each other. I swear, we didn't know she was yours. Krasniki just said to send a message. Make some noise in your territory. We were supposed to rough up a few people, nothing serious. Nothing serious. Giovanni's voice was soft, terrifyingly soft. You put your hands on someone under my protection and call it nothing serious. It was just supposed to be a warning. Show we could reach into your streets whenever we wanted. Cole's eyes darted between Giovanni and Franco, searching for mercy he wouldn't find. We weren't supposed to really hurt anyone bad. Just scare them. Scare them. Giovanni stood slowly, each movement precise and controlled. He crossed to stand directly in front of Cole, looking down at the kneeling man. Tell me something. When you saw her uniform, when you realized she worked in my home, what did you think would happen? We thought, Cole stammered. Krasniki said you'd back down, that you were getting soft, that taking Brooklyn was making you weak, spreading you too thin. Krasniki was wrong. Giovanni crouched, bringing himself eye level with Cole. Do you know what she does here? She cleans, she folds towels, she arranges flowers. She's 27 years old, working 2 shifts to pay off her dead mother's medical bills. And you beat her unconscious in the rain for politics. The silence that followed was absolute. Even from my position by the door, I could feel the weight of it, heavy and suffocating. Then Giovanni asked the question, and my breath caught in my throat. Who did this to you? His voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more menace than any scream could have. Each word fell like a stone into still water, creating ripples of dread that spread through the room. I did. Cole's voice broke. I did it. Victor held her, but I hit her. I'm sorry, Mr. Moretti, I'm so sorry. You're sorry. Giovanni didn't move, didn't blink. You're sorry because you got caught, because you're kneeling here instead of sleeping peacefully in whatever hole you crawled out of. You're sorry because you know what comes next. He stood, turned his back on the kneeling men, and walked to his desk. The casual dismissal was somehow more frightening than any display of rage would have been. Franco. Giovanni's tone shifted to pure business. Take them. Make it clean. I want Krasniki to receive a message, but I don't want bodies showing up in the harbor creating problems with the harbor police. Understood? Understood. Franco gestured to the other men, who moved forward to haul Cole and Victor to their feet. Wait. Cole struggled against the hands gripping his arms. Please, Mr. Moretti. I have a family. So did she. Giovanni didn't turn around. Her mother died of cancer. Her sister works in my kitchen. She has people who love her. People who depend on her. Just like you claim to have. The difference is she never put her hands on anyone. She just tried to go home after working a double shift. Take them. I retreated before I could see more, pressing myself against the wall around the corner, pulse pounding so hard I thought they'd hear it. Footsteps approached, and I held perfectly still as Franco and his men led the prisoners past, moving toward what I assumed was a back exit. Cole was crying now. Quiet, desperate sobs that made my stomach twist despite everything. The study door clicked shut. I waited until the footsteps faded completely before creeping back upstairs, my legs shaking so badly I had to grip the railing for support. Back in the guest room, I sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling. I'd just watched Giovanni Moretti condemn 2 men to death. Calmly, efficiently, with less emotion than I'd use ordering coffee. And the worst part, the part that should have terrified me but instead left me feeling strangely hollow, was that I couldn't bring myself to care. They'd beaten me unconscious, left me bleeding in an alley, and now they would pay for it. I should have felt guilt, horror, some sort of moral revulsion at being complicit in violence. Instead, I felt nothing but a cold sort of satisfaction. Hours passed. I watched through the window as black SUVs pulled away from the house, headlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. 3 vehicles, moving in formation, carrying men with guns and zip-tied prisoners to whatever fate Giovanni had ordained for them. I wondered if I'd just become an accessory to murder. Wondered if I cared. The sky was beginning to lighten when a soft knock came at my door. I'd thrown on a robe over the borrowed pajamas, and when I opened the door, Giovanni stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked tired. The first time I'd ever seen even a hint of weariness in his carefully controlled facade. "Did I wake you?" he asked. I couldn't sleep. He nodded, unsurprised, and held out one of the cups. I took it, our fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. The coffee was perfect. Cream and sugar in exactly the proportions I preferred. Of course he knew. He knew everything. "Can I come in?" he asked. I stepped back, letting him enter. He moved to the chair by the window, the same one I'd been occupying for hours, and I perched on the edge of the bed. What happened to them? The question emerged before I could second-guess asking it. Giovanni studied me over the rim of his coffee cup, dark eyes assessing. They paid for their mistake. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need. His voice was gentle but firm. You don't want details, Lauren. Trust me on this. How do you know what I want? Because I've seen that look before. The one you're wearing right now. The one that says you're trying to figure out if you should feel guilty for not feeling guilty. He set his cup on the side table. Don't. Those men made choices. They dealt in violence. They knew the risks. I sipped my coffee, letting the warmth seep into my hands, chase away some of the chill that had settled into my bones. I should be afraid of you. Probably. I'm not. I know. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and for a moment he looked less like a crime boss and more like just a man carrying heavy burdens. How do you feel? Honestly, my ribs hurt. My face hurts. Everything hurts. I touched my swollen eye gingerly, but safer than I've felt since Thursday night. Satisfaction flickered across his features. There and gone. Good. That's what matters. He stood, crossed the space between us in 2 strides. Let me see. I tilted my face up, and his fingers brushed my jaw, turning my head to catch the early morning light streaming through the window. His touch was careful, professional almost, but there was something else underneath it. Something that made my skin tingle and my breath catch. "The swelling's gone down a little," he observed. "But you need a proper medical evaluation. Dr. Caruso is expecting us at 9. I can't afford—" I wasn't asking about your finances. His thumb traced the edge of the bruise on my cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. "This happened because of me. Because you work in my house. On my street. That makes it my responsibility." That's not how responsibility works. It is in my world. He withdrew his hand, and I immediately missed the warmth of it. Get dressed. Wear something comfortable. We leave in an hour. He moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. For what it's worth, he said quietly. You're not just a maid to me. You never were. Then he was gone, leaving me alone with those words echoing in my head and coffee growing cold in my hands. Through the window, full daylight was breaking over the city, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere out there, 2 men who'd hurt me were facing consequences I couldn't let myself imagine, and here I sat, in a mansion that should feel like a cage, but instead felt like sanctuary. Drinking coffee made exactly how I liked it, by a man who commanded death with a whisper. The world had shifted again overnight, and sitting there in borrowed silk pajamas, watching the sun rise over a city full of violence and beauty, I realized I'd shifted with it. Giovanni insisted we leave within the hour, and I didn't have the energy to argue. Brittany helped me dress in jeans and a soft burgundy sweater she'd brought from our apartment, moving around me with careful efficiency while pointedly not mentioning the events of the previous night. We both knew what had happened. Neither of us wanted to say it aloud. The SUV waiting outside was sleek and black, windows tinted dark enough to hide whoever sat inside. Giovanni held the back door open and I climbed in, biting back a gasp as my ribs protested the movement. He slid in beside me. Not across from me, not in the front with a driver, but right there in the back seat close enough that I could smell cedar and expensive cologne. You don't need to come, I said as he closed the door. Just send me with Franco or I'm coming. Final. Absolute. He pulled the SUV into traffic with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent years navigating Manhattan streets. Dr. Caruso is expecting both of us. The drive should have been awkward. Instead, silence settled between us like something almost comfortable. I watched the city slide past through tinted glass, tried not to think about how much a private medical visit would cost, how many months of payments I'd be adding to my already impossible debt. Stop calculating, Giovanni said without looking at me. I wasn't. You were. I can practically hear you doing math. He glanced over briefly. Whatever you're worried about, don't be. This isn't your expense. I can't let you pay for... You're not letting me do anything. I'm doing it because someone was attacked on my street, in my territory, wearing my household's uniform. That makes it my responsibility. His hands tightened fractionally on the steering wheel. Besides, you work for me. Consider it workers' compensation. That's not how workers' comp works. It's how mine does. The clinic occupied the second floor of an unremarkable building in Murray Hill. No sign outside, no indication it was anything other than offices. Giovanni led me through a private entrance. Upstairs I climbed slowly, each step a fresh reminder of Thursday night. Dr. Caruso was perhaps 60, with silver hair and hands that looked like they belonged to a surgeon. He examined my face with clinical detachment, palpating the swelling around my eye, checking my pupil responses. No sign of orbital fracture, he said, making notes on a tablet. Significant soft tissue damage, but it'll heal. How's your vision? Blurry in the left eye, but it's getting better. Good. Now the ribs. He gestured to an exam table. Shirt off. You can keep the bra on. I hesitated, acutely aware of Giovanni standing against the wall, watching. Dr. Caruso noticed my discomfort. Mr. Moretti, perhaps. I'm staying. Giovanni's tone allowed no argument, but he turned to face the window, offering me that small privacy. I peeled off the sweater carefully, trying not to gasp when the movement pulled at damaged tissue. The bruises had ripened overnight into spectacular shades of purple and yellow, spreading across my left side like some grotesque watercolor. Dr. Caruso's professional mask slipped for just a moment. Christ. Then he was all business again.